Assalamu alaikum everyone. Good evening. My name is Ahmed and I'm the president of the Oxford Bangladesh Society and I'll be your co-moderator for this event. Last summer, our home country of Bangladesh experienced monumental change. After decades of brutal authoritarian rule, the people, led by courageous students, rose up and overthrew the dictatorial regime of Sheikh Hasina. The core question before us now, many months into this transitional phase, is what kind of government will replace what was removed? The national question, the national conversation in Bangladesh is now dominated by talks for deep reforms. Reforms in the government, reforms in the judiciary, reforms in the economy, and also reforms in diplomacy, how our relations are with our neighboring countries. It is hoped that these reforms in these areas will not only allow the country to progress, but ultimately and crucially prevent authoritarian rule from ever emerging again. The largest organization which stood in opposition to Sheikh Hasina's regime is the BNP, Bangladesh Nationalist Party, led by figures including Tarique Rahman. Their history and vision for the country's future are compiled in the book that we will discuss today. We hope that this event will not only provide a vital opportunity for us to not only examine and also critique their ideas, but also ultimately to discuss how Bangladesh can secure a stable and prosperous future. We hope that you all very much enjoy this event. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to give some time just to explain the format of the event. The purpose of this event is to provide the space for a conversation about the future of Bangladesh. And we have a varied number of speakers, all of diverse areas of expertise. And the reason for that is that in questions and in answering the question of where should Bangladesh go in the future, we need opinions and we need the advice of people from different areas of different intellectual spheres. So some of the guests we have with us today, the first of which is Mohammed Zahin Abedi. He's sat here to my right, and he's the author of the book. It's quite a long book. I don't know if any of you have read it, but it's a commentary on Tarique Rahman's role and effort in providing a democratic government for Bangladesh. Now, the purpose of this event is to engage in a discussion with 5 different people, as well as yourselves, for a Q&A at the end, to try and get an idea of what that future should look like, and how democratic it is, and how we can work towards a democratic future for Bangladesh. So, I've mentioned the book's author, and I go on to mention the rest of our speakers. So we have a politician, Mr. Zahin Shan, sat to my here, a former BNP Member of Parliament and party media strategist. He provides an institutional and organizational view. So how coalitions form, how campaigns communicate under constraints, and what opposition politics looks like. We also have a legal scholar, Dr. Ahmed, far to the right. A human rights and international law academic, she situates the book's claims with normative frameworks. We also have with us an activist and photographer, Dr. Zedin, a well-recognized documentarian of Bangladesh's democracy movements. He provides a civic and lived experience layer. And finally, we have a diplomat, Sir Peter Heap, a former British ambassador and senior trade commissioner, providing an external and geopolitical angle. So, with all these 5 different people, we aim to look at with 5 different lenses of how we should frame the future of Bangladesh. The event will be structured as follows. We will invite each of the 5 speakers to come up and provide their experience and their understanding for roughly 7 minutes. And then following that, we'll finish with a question and answer where myself and Muhtari, the co-presenters, will choose people to answer questions. So it is with my great pleasure that I'd like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you. It's a place where I always love to come back because I also did my master's in international human rights law from Oxford University. And it is a kind of for me, it's a place where I would love to come back again and again. And when it is an opportunity to talk about a person like Mr. Tarique Rahman, obviously it's kind of doubles the joy. So I have grown up in a family where one of my uncles is greatly involved in politics, but particularly Bangladesh Nationalist Party's politics. His name is Kajol Jalali. So I'm always kind of aware of Mr. Tarique Rahman's political philosophy, ideology. So that's always like kind of a kind of a thing impressed me to know more about his political career and political life. This book, I'll just make some comments on this book. I will just share my thoughts actually after reading this book, what I have felt about the policies that Mr. Rahman has taken up and what actually the book has kind of tried to reflect on. So the book actually has strongly emphasized on political and personal dimension of Mr. Rahman's life and tracing his path from his childhood to till date in a very detailed and engaging manner. And as I said, alongside it has explained Bangladesh political crisis and particularly what has happened in last 14 years. And over the 14 years, Mr. Rahman has faced significant challenges, but his stance against the fascist regime is kind of a testament to his resilience, his commitment, his dedication to the people of Bangladesh. I think this book has very nicely mentioned he is one of the few leaders in the whole world whose human rights has been kind of curtailed severely, and his persecution was one of the major strategy of the government. It was a strategic move of the fascist regime to suppress his political career, to muzzle his voice, and also his freedom of expression was curtailed. None of his speeches, which is made for the people of Bangladesh, was given a chance to be circulated during that regime. So this book meticulously documents the persistent threats that have overshadowed Mr. Tarique Rahman's political journey. His career has been continually imperiled by a series of false cases brought against him, not only to undermine the credibility, but also to suppress his influence, to silence his voice, to damage his reputation, and sabotage his political career. So nothing is that since today's program to know about what are the future policies. So Mr. Rahman, if you read this book, you will get to understand that how visionary he is and how his visionary contributions in policy formulations in terms of making a better Bangladesh. And this book recounts many political events of his life, and it is very good read when you see the extract in this book you'll see a chapter written on his vision that actually he shared in 2005 in a roundtable discussion which is organized by Manav Jomin, and also some other interviews when he gave the interviews and how he actually talked about Bangladesh, to making a better Bangladesh, how to work for inclusive democracy. And also his vision, he says in an interview recently in an interview with the Financial Times that he does not just want to focus on garments industry, he also wants to make Bangladesh a supply hub for retailers like Amazon, eBay. So he wants to make Bangladesh economically self-sufficient. So he really, the statement he made is really kind of, and the people of Bangladesh actually kind of put confidence in his statement. That is something I believe he said, we strongly believe that we are in a position to form the Bangladesh alone. This is the statement he made in an interview with the Financial Times. And so his visions to make a better Bangladesh, to make a democratic Bangladesh. We have seen what has happened in the last 14 years. It's very much clear from his interviews, and obviously if you read this book, it is very much apparent there. Mr. Rahman's philosophy is rooted in mobilizing people at the grassroots level, which is a vision that remains central to the goal of establishing a democratic Bangladesh. So the book mentioned, and I quote here, which is really very interesting to know, his means Mr. Rahman's message is clear and precise: unite and connect the grassroots people to the process of production and national policies, make them financially self-reliant, and empower them in every sphere of social life. You may know he has recently introduced 31 points, and which further reflects how to connect with the people in the grassroots level, how to listen to them, how to value their feedback. So despite the hardship Mr. Rahman faced while in exile, Mr. Rahman remained silent, but he remained distant, he remained silent, but he never gave up. He still, his organizational skill remained still strong. He reinvented the relationship with party leaders at all levels, rebuilding the party with necessary changes. Through years marked by authoritarian clampdown and political suppression, he has kept alive the hope of democratic and just Bangladesh. So given the current political and political situation and fragile economy in Bangladesh, it is evident that Mr. Rahman is the only hope to reshape the political landscape. Mr. Rahman also recognizes the generational shift in politics. He is open to embracing the energy and potential of young generation. We have seen that the young generation who have grown up under mistrust, corruption, and in an undemocratic nation. I believe it is a hope that they will be guided in the right direction under his navigation. Last but not least, I firmly believe that only through his vision and policies in Bangladesh can reverse the brain drain, can restore trust in its domestic institution. Although the brain drain concept is quite outdated, because these days everything is live streamed. People can benefit and be benefited being in any corner of the world. But thing is that here I believe his policy would include the diaspora community's knowledge and expertise, and who can call upon whenever necessary. So I believe his leadership offers hope for a shared future where people, communities, nation work together towards a common goal and for a better collective outcome. As the book concludes, so too I, with a powerful quotation from Mr. Rahman. He says, "Change in power does not mean a shift in state authority, but rather a qualitative transformation of the state and politics." So obviously in this precarious state of our nation, we really look forward not to have a simple alter or changes. We are eagerly waiting for fundamental and systematic shift in country's political structure, policies, and leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, for this wonderful first speech. We'll now move on to our next speaker, Mohammed Zain. Mr. Abedin is a journalist, researcher, and author currently residing in the United States. He served as the Dhaka correspondent of the Associated Press of Pakistan for 12 years and was engaged in the events of the Liberation War and also student politics in Bangladesh during the late Pakistan era and the early independence eras. The documentation of the history and political ideas of the BNP through the narrative of one of its current leaders has been compiled into the book. Please welcome Mohammed Zain Abedin.
I remember the architect of Bangladesh, Honorable Zia Rahman, who sacrificed a lot for the country, and he is the only one person in the world who started his vision of liberating Bangladesh in 1971. And later, the way he started to build this country, though it remained incompleted, I hope remaining tasks will be done by our leader, great leader, Honorable Tarique Rahman, on whom I wrote this humble book. I am grateful to Allah who enabled this to venture this to writing this book. But the thing, the vision, what we need to fulfill in our life for our nation is our hope, Mr. Tarique Rahman, who is to complete the remaining, lay the foundation of the remaining building the country in the way for which we fought in 1971. So I will not speak too much, as because honorable speakers are also here. I want to pray for me so that I can serve for my country under the leadership of Tarique Rahman, and let us, all of us, should help him in every possible way to make Tarique Rahman's leadership a success, so that we can leave a strong nation for our next generation, a country that will remain strong even for generation to generation to come. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'd next like to introduce the diplomat, Sir Peter Heap. He is a decorated British career diplomat. He served as the British Ambassador and High Commissioner to the Bahamas, Brazil, and he was a representative to many other countries. He also has years of experience in trade and finance as a senior trade commissioner, and later holding several leadership roles in the private sector, including positions with the HSBC Investment Bank. So his decades of international service and expertise in global affairs give him a unique perspective on this topic. Please welcome Sir Peter Heap.
Thank you. Well, good evening to all. And I will be speaking in an accent a little different to the other speakers, but I trust you'll all be able to understand me. I think probably you will. And it's very good to be here with this audience, which continues to grow by the minute, and that's very nice for all concerned too. Being back in Oxford is always pleasant, and I was here a very long time ago. I probably shouldn't tell you how long ago, but it was actually about 70 years ago. And 70 years ago I did PPE at a college the other side of the high street called Merton. And in those days, nobody ever heard of PPE. It had only started, I think, in about the 1920s. And you couldn't say to someone that you did PPE because they'd never heard of it. Now, with both the front benches in the House of Commons filled by people who did PPE at Oxford, it's one of the best known degrees going. So one doesn't have to spell it out anymore. This is billed as a book launch. Book launches, normally my experience, and as I've just revealed, my experience goes back quite a long way. And I bought a lot of books and own quite a lot of books. And book launches normally involve a pile of books in the corner, which are scribbled in by the author, and the author hopes to make quite a lot of sales. Today is a bit different. No books for you to buy. I'm told that the book has only been published in the United States. I assume that means that Amazon would willingly sell it to you, but I think it does mean that you're not likely to be able to walk into a bookshop and buy it anywhere close by. I think the author would share the view of a book launch I went to fairly recently somewhere in Florida. The author was in fact British, a fairly well-known author. And he ended his talk about the book saying, "You don't have to read my book, but you do have to buy it." And I'm sure the author of today's book would also share that sentiment. The book is somewhat unusual in that it, from the title, I think one would assume that it is a biography. A book I hasten to add that I first became acquainted with about 2 days ago, so my knowledge is rather quickly acquired and rather speedily. But it is not a biography primarily. It's a book about the politics of Bangladesh over recent decades. But of course the principal character, as I'm sure you all know, has been in exile in the UK for 17, 18 years, and therefore is not so much a participant as an observer and a commentator on the events. But for all that, it is a very interesting book. It has some unusual features. It's very well presented, very well published by the American publishers. One of the features that slightly sort of amused me is that you look at the book, there you see it, you open the cover, and there you see it again. I've got a lot of books, I don't think I've seen that ever before, that a book has the same colourful printed cover inside the cover as it has on the outside cover. But that's rather nice. It's a very persuasive book. It's there to persuade you to support and believe and share the ambitions and so on of the central figure, and it's a very persuasive book. It certainly left me thinking that Mr. Rahman would deserve very much support. I see the items in the book, of course, as through the eyes of one who's been a diplomat in a number of countries, as I'll briefly run through in a moment. There's only one moment in the book where a British diplomat is mentioned, and that is somewhere in the middle. The author refers to the British High Commissioner and the American ambassador, who are overly active in Bangladesh internal affairs. And he names both the ambassador and the High Commissioner. Other than that, you don't get many mentions of diplomats. My diplomatic career was fairly extensive. I did the full range. I went straight in from Oxford here and lasted till the relatively early compulsory retirement age. And in that time, I was in 9 different countries, which, as a diplomat, which is above the Foreign Office average, and as a consequence was less in London than that average. In the very beginning, when I was dreaming of faraway places and moonlight on the water and palm trees, my first assignment was to Dublin. From Dublin, I went to Canada. In Canada, I was, the High Commissioner was Lord Amery, and recently before that he was Derek Heskett Amery, Chancellor of the Exchequer. I don't think you'd find a Chancellor of the Exchequer today going to Canada. You might find him going to Washington. I doubt you'd find him going to Canada. And one of my tasks as his private secretary, as they made me as a junior diplomat there, as his private secretary, diplomats on a new arrival in a post have to call on other diplomats. The man who'd been Chancellor of the Exchequer did rather surprise me, and he had to go off and make these calls on ambassadors from other countries. He knew where very few of them were, and I had to take in an atlas and point out where this country whose ambassador he was to go and meet that morning was. And he would say there, and I'd say, no, not there, it's there. And so to be thinking that one's Chancellor of the Exchequer didn't know where half the countries in the world were did seem to me rather interesting. From Canada, I went to Sri Lanka, and that's, I'm afraid, as near as I ever got to Bangladesh. In Sri Lanka, I was also the one in the High Commission responsible for relations with the Maldive Islands, which are, of course, not very far away. The Maldives became, while I was there, independent. They had been a British protectorate, never a British colony. We never had a governor or any administrative staff, but they were nonetheless a British protectorate. And the negotiations were all conducted through the High Commission in Colombo, and happily ended satisfactorily. And there was a photograph of which I have a copy of the signing ceremony. I'm standing in the background as the most junior of the British team, and I'm told that that photograph is reproduced on a wall in the governing major building in a mural in Mali, the capital of the Maldive Islands. And from there, a spell in London, then 3 years in New York, 4 years in New York, where I was Deputy Head of British Information Services, which was the sort of PR arm of the British Diplomatic Service covering all of the United States. And that was a really fun job. And from there, from New York back to get to London again, and then to Bahamas. From Bahamas, where I was High Commissioner, from Bahamas to Hong Kong. That's where I was the Trade Commissioner, and from Hong Kong to Brazil, where I was Ambassador. I sometimes say a bit sheepishly to people that lots of people in the Foreign Service have been a Trade Commissioner, a Deputy High Commissioner, and a High Commissioner. I would claim to be the only one that ever did them in the reverse order. So that saw me through to the end. But anyway, that shows the sort of experience, and perhaps, hopefully, some of the audience are students at Oxford who hopefully might be thinking of becoming a diplomat, and that's just to give you a taste of what a fun job it can be. I still get asked, years after retiring, on a daily basis, which of those countries did I prefer, which job did I prefer? And my answer is always the same. For two reasons. I'm not going to give you a country or a job, because to make one the best is another the worst, and I don't want to do that. Secondly, they're all very interesting experiences. To spend 4 years in Nigeria, to spend 3 years in New York, gives you totally different experiences. Both, I would suggest, important experiences for understanding today's world, and in seeing them too from a privileged position, in which you get to meet the very top people in the country, and have a hand in influencing British policy towards those countries. So if there are any budding diplomats in the audience, I say go for it. I'd say now, finally, to a final bit, a few words on the Commonwealth link between Bangladesh and Britain, and of course 54 other countries. It's a link which I think is an important link. I think it's a link which Britain has neglected somewhat in the last decade or two or three. And I would much rather that any British government, regardless of party, would pay much more attention. It seems to me Commonwealth countries understand each other, have more things in common than they do with most other countries, non-Commonwealth. We've all got rather similar legal systems, educational systems, understand each other well, better than most other countries. And I think it behoves us all in Commonwealth countries to try and take advantage of that relationship. I'm critical, in fact, a bit of two of our recent prime ministers who it seems to me have not quite measured up to understanding the importance of the Commonwealth link. First, Margaret Thatcher. I was High Commissioner in the Bahamas when the every 2-year heads of government of Commonwealth countries was held there. We're now going back decades. And the issue of the day at that Commonwealth conference was sanctions against South Africa, then still in the throes of apartheid. And Margaret Thatcher went to that conference thinking she would find allies at the conference, particularly of the old white Commonwealth, and she didn't. She found she was alone, and she came in for some very heavy-handed criticism. And over the days of the conference, she was sort of battling to hold her own against 54 other countries. And she never really warmed to the Commonwealth again after that. And that was, I think, sad and a pity on an issue on which she was on the wrong side in the first place. And the other one was Tony Blair. He came to Hong Kong while I was there, and I hosted a dinner for him. And we were talking about, it was still well before the handover to China, and I said to him, look, I do hope in these years to the handover, we will keep in mind the needs of the people of Hong Kong and not just the wishes of China and so on. And he said, oh, well, don't talk to me about that. He said, I'm modern, I'm young. He was in 40s at the time, I think. He said, for me, Europe and the United States, those are the relations that mean more to us. And I thought, well, I don't share that with you, and I think that's rather a pity. Anyway, those are the sort of views of my views on Commonwealth link, and I'm so glad that we do share that link with Bangladesh, and I think it's an important link for both of us, and I hope that as Bangladesh settles down from a somewhat turbulent, somewhat ups and down history to date, the link with Britain, with the Commonwealth, remains important, becomes even more important, and with the help of Tarique Rahman, who everyone tells me will be the next Prime Minister, that peaceful days, prosperous days for Bangladesh are right around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Peter Heap, for your insight into your unique experiences throughout your career and also about Bangladesh's role in the Commonwealth. I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, the globally renowned activist and photojournalist, Dr. Shahid Al-Alam. Dr. Alam is a figure who has dedicated his career to documenting and leading campaigns against authoritarianism and human rights abuses in Bangladesh for many years. His visual documentation of human rights abuses carried out by paramilitary organizations were collected in the landmark Crossfire exhibition in 2010, helping to shed light on this crucial issue. In 2018, his public criticism of the government's brutal crackdown during the student-led road safety protests led to his arrest, torture and imprisonment, making him a victim of the very same state oppression which he was fighting. His courageous activism during this period led him to eventually being recognized as one of Times Magazine's Person of the Year in 2018. Additionally, he is also the founder of monumental institutions such as the Tarique Picture Library, the Pathshala South Asia Media Institute, and Chobi Mela International Photography Festival, which have all profoundly shaped visual journalism across the continent. Dr. Alam's activism is not confined to the borders of Bangladesh. Just a few weeks ago, he was on one of the ships of the Global Samud Flotilla as it attempted to break the brutal siege of Gaza. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Shahid Al-Alam to the stage.
thank you very much for having me. I'm not sure you will be clapping just as much at the end, because I'm not probably the type of speaker you're expecting. One of the reasons is because I was concerned when I was asked to come here, because I thought I might be endorsing a hagiography. And that certainly is not what I intended to do, or what I intend to do right now. That's what generally these book launches end up being. So I had those reservations. In a sense, I was happy that I was asked, because that provided an answer. I'm not known to be a sycophant of anyone. So the fact that I was asked, in a sense, reflected or suggested an openness, which I thought was meaningful. Besides, it's a subject I'm extremely interested in. The book is timely. I didn't have time to read the book like my previous speaker, but as a photographer, I could leaf through the pages with the photographs. That is something which is within my area of expertise. And because I did, one of the things that struck me was the fact that not a single photograph had credits to any of the photographers. In fact, the cover photograph doesn't credit the photographer either. That was worrying for me, because, you know, here is a book that talks about rights, that talks about respect, and here we have pictures being used without any reference to the author, without any, and certainly the book does not have a picture editor of any form. You can see that there, but that so little importance was given to those issues of rights of artists, of rights of authors, of intellectual property, was something that jarred with me. But that's really not what this book is about. I mention it in passing because I think it is relevant to remind people of those things that need to be addressed, and particularly in a country like mine where it is so rampant. I think having a book of such prominence doing that, it gives the wrong message. I'd like to, but I digress, because what we're really talking about is a resilient opposition leader resisting, fighting autocracy, foreign meddling, democratic backsliding, all of which are extremely important. Whether we have a potential leader capable of shepherding a turbulent nation to a stable, egalitarian, and thriving nation is what we should be debating. I have actually had the privilege of speaking to him personally. I spoke to him once during Hasina's regime, when Hasina was in power, again once after she left. What struck me was that he'd done his homework. I brought up the accusations that were happening after 5th of August about how BNP was behaving in some of the same ways as Army League had been behaving. And that concerned me as a Bangladeshi citizen. I was pleasantly surprised that he was not defensive. He took it on board. You could see that he had addressed this. And from, we were very open about it, and he talked about how he'd taken specific action to ensure that they did not happen. And he was not in the state of denial that we've always had in the past, because this is what all regimes do. But what all regimes also do is that they're in a state of denial and do not address it. Here was a person who was prepared to take it on board, and I later spoke to the head of police in Bangladesh, and he was telling me about how Tarique had actually reached out to him, giving him a list to say, these are the people you need to book, you need to put them behind bars. I know that they're my party people, but that is not what it's about. I think at the end of the day, this needs to be done. Whether that happened or not is another story, but politics is more complicated than that. But what happened when I met him after Hasina's departure was even more interesting, because I tabled a lot of things that I felt should happen and continue to feel should happen. He'd done his homework. He knew the figures. He had actually looked at some of those possibilities. I didn't always agree with his answers, but I could see that this was a person who wasn't taking it lightly. He was taking it on board. But since we're talking of books, I'm tempted to quote the editor of one of my books, Vijay Prashad, who in his recent Tricontinental newsletter has some observations which are pertinent, I think, to today. He talks of Chile, and he talks of a very interesting statement there. He says, they took so much from us that they even took away our fear. And that is what happened in Bangladesh. You had a completely repressive regime which had full spectral control on the media, on the police, on the judiciary, even academia, and unarmed youth were able to bring her down. It was a phenomenal example of people power that I think should give us pause. I also think that it is something that future governments need to remember, because that people power remains. And should they behave the same way as before, I hope and I believe that they too will face the same situation. So I hope that that is something that people take into cognizance. Now that has happened elsewhere too. I mean, high school students in Chile were between 14 and 18. Ours were a little bit older. But similar movements have happened in India, in USA, in Sri Lanka, and now in Nepal. It is something that is happening. It is something we need to recognize. People will not take that shit anymore. And I think it is important to recognize that there are young people out there who are rebellious, who feel they want a different form of governance, and that the governed will insist on having a say in the process of governance. And I think that's very, very important. They took to the streets to reject a failing system. Another very interesting thing needs to be remembered. In South Asia in particular, there's a youth bulge. We are a very young community. There is also unemployment. This youth is the most educated youth in history. And they're not prepared to be shoved down the line to do menial work and things like that. They want fulfillment. A change of regime will not in itself solve this problem. The change has to address systemic issues, and merely change at the top will not do that. So the question remains, how can a person who's been away from a country for so many years write about it? Does he feel the pulse of the nation? Can he engage with the public? Is he the leader Bangladesh has been waiting for? We don't know. What a politician promises before election often is not the same as what he delivers after elections. That too is something we need to take into account. But what we need to discuss is how the approach that he has differs from the approach of others. Because that is all we can decide at this moment. What will happen afterwards, we need to decide on the basis of the actions that they take afterwards. At the moment, these are propositions, and we need to analyze them on the basis of that. Is he capable of implementing them? And whether he genuinely aims to implement them or not, or whether this is simply electioneering, is something we need to consider. This is not a novel, and frankly, it's not a particularly lucid reading, but there are questions that need to be answered. The man has not been tested. Is he capable of holding a party together that has been in the wilderness for nearly 2 decades? There's some factual inaccuracies as well. I mean, there is a reference to 3,000 lives lost. I mean, I'm not sure where that reference comes from. I mean, the UN talks about 1,400. That includes people who've died after the 5th of August. So, yeah, perhaps there is a basis for 3,000, but I'd like to know. It's a figure that's been planted without the backing of it. What's the source? But there are interesting things, positive things as well. I mean, the book talks of Tarique Rahman sharing a caricature on his own social media. That's very, very different. I mean, a stark contrast from school kids who were jailed for having done a similar thing in previous regimes. So we recognize that. It also talks about recognizing the role of farmers and laborers. The real hero of Bangladesh are our farmers in the field, our migrant workers, our garment workers. They are the ones who've given us this privilege. All of us here sitting are privileged people. Our privilege has been largely fueled by people who we give very little regard to, who we treat abysmally, regardless of which regime it is. Whether we are different is something we have to see, but here is a person who appears to be addressing those issues and recognizing that. So will the leadership lead to what the book suggests is a qualitative transformation of the state and politics? We need to see what happens in the streets in the months to come. Will provide the answers. Is Tarique Rahman simply aiming for a win in the upcoming elections? Or is he someone who hopes to lead Bangladesh into a new era? We hope it is the latter, but only time will tell. And one of the things I want to leave you with is that tyrants are there. I mean, today tyrants are all across the globe. There are autocrats everywhere. One of the reasons they get away with it is not simply because of what they do, but because of our silence. Because we have allowed them to get away with things they should never get away with. And it is really up to us to ensure that tyrants, that people like Tarique Rahman, that all other political leaders are questioned, evaluated, put on the docks and made to answer. And it is up to us to ensure that we bring about that accountability. But I'm hopeful. And one of the things we must resist is being a cog in the wheel, because, of course, they thrive on fear. And true, I mean, there's been extrajudicial killings, there's been disappearances, and all the things that have continued to happen. But, you know, one of the things that also happens is when people like us feel, what's the use? How can we resist? What difference can we make? And we give up. And the minute we give up, we've actually become a cog in the wheel. The repressive regime no longer needs to be repressive. Repression becomes normalized. Because we, by accepting that position, have normalized resistance. And we've done their job for them. So it is really up to us to ensure that every step, at every moment, we make that difference, we ask those hard questions, we hold them to account, everyone, including Tarique Rahman, including people on this stage. And that is something we must constantly do, because that is what will bring about change. Because, believe me, on that throne, given that opportunity, given impunity, they will all behave the same, regardless of what they say. And I think there are differences, there are good people, but even good people get corrupted, given that opportunity. And it is really up to us to ensure that Bangladesh remains on the track. Too many people have given their lives, too much sacrifice has been made, too much blood has been shed for us to return to status quo, for us to go back to the way it was. I believe it can be different. I believe Tarique Rahman is perhaps a person who can bring about the difference, but it is really we, through our active resistance, who will ensure that that change is permanent. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce our final speaker, Zahiruddin Chopin, who is a veteran Bangladeshi politician and a member of the BNP party. He served 2 consecutive terms as a member of parliament in 1996 and in 2001. So during his political career, he held key roles within the BNP. He became the convener of the party's National Media Committee, and he helped craft and communicate the BNP's message during challenging times. He's a committed advocate for democratic processes, and he's been actively involved in opposition movements, and is known for his media engagements, defending free expression and fair elections in Bangladesh. So with decades of first-hand experience in Bangladeshi parliament, I welcome Zahiruddin Chopin.
Good evening. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I must appreciate first the Oxford Bangla Society to organize such a program, the book launching program and discussion meeting on our leaders, Tarique Rahman politics and policies contemporary Bangladesh. And of course, credit should goes to my elder brother, Mr. Zainul Abidin, He's one of the eminent editor in New York journalist community. We had been introduced for a long time before. I must appreciate him to take this initiative and have this book for all the readers. And the guest of the panel, Mr. Sir Peter Heap. I'm honored to be sitting with him. And Mr. Shahidullah Alam is not only an eminent Bangladeshi citizen and human rights activist, he is one of the international personalities now. And all the Bangladeshis are now, we are proud of him. And especially when he stood behind beside the Palestinian Liberation War and the suppressed people as a human rights activist. And by this time, we got all this substance from a professor, teacher of Middlesex University, Professor Hawk, Ahmed, and the students community which are here from Oxford University, the distinguished, all the guests. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Being a political activist and the worker of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, I am privileged to work with Mr. Tarique Rahman as my leader, and now he is the acting chairman of our party. I had last 30 years experience to work with him, to assist him, especially for his all homework like in policy, in organizations. And when I went through this book, again I must appreciate Mr. General Abdin that he tried to reflect his all thought and his all works regarding the Bangladesh citizens and Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the democracy and the movement, and also the essential reforms Bangladesh needs nowadays. And this is very important not only for the substance for Bangladesh community, and also when we saw the Gen Z movement on the base of social media power, new media power, the power of communication, the power of internet, and when it reflects in Sri Lanka, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Madagascar, and finally in Morocco. So it's a completely new generation, and so that's why the two moderators is sitting with me beside me. I'm proud to be sitting with them, and again thanks to him to take the initiative from the Oxford Bangla Society. And we are very aware and we are very careful, one of the activists of Bangladesh Nationalist Party and as a worker of Mr. Tarique Rahman, that after the changes last 5th August in Bangladesh, ousted the fascist government from the power, now people are expecting a genuinely political system which represents the people's desire and the democratic spirit, which will be reflected in the national election, which will be reflected in the continuous parliamentary activities, and also not only the reforms in the political structure and the state system and the state mechanism. It must be reflected in the day-to-day life of the suppressed people. And it's not only the question of the political rights and civil rights, it's also the question of the economic empowerment. It's also the question of the educational right, the basic right, and of course we have to be careful even also about the environment, our plantation, a lot of things. And of course I must request those who read the book that it is not only the superficial political policies Mr. Tarique Rahman tried to explain. Always he focused on the betterment for the people, especially the young generation is coming up. He is thinking about that also. So majorly his points is divided by the two things. One is the reforms and restructuring of the political system, state mechanism, and other is the changes in the citizens' day-to-day life and their economic activities. On that basis, I'm just focusing on that. The specific economic and social please in recent months, October 25, Tarique Rahman has announced several specific policies, initiatives targeting key sectors for agriculture and food security. 6-point plan he declared. Farmers card, a digital identity card for all farmers to ensure they receive direct access to subsidized credit, fair pricing, and crops insurance without middlemen. Family card, a social security card issued in the name of the female head of the household to empower women and ensure family nutrition. Water security, a major infrastructure plan to restore 20,000 kilometers of rivers and canals and build modern Tista and Ganga barrages. Job creation, a target to create 1.3 million new jobs in the agriculture sector, from logistics and cold storage to food processing. Agri-tech for youth, providing a startup funding and support for young entrepreneurs to engage in modern farming, including drone and mechanization technology. For women's empowerment, SME loans, dedicated support and loan packages for female entrepreneurs, education ensuring access to robust academic and technical vocational education for girls in both rural and urban areas. Role in policy making, actively increasing the participation of women in politics, administration, and policy forming. Safety and security, a commitment to ensure women's physical safety in physical space and digital. These are the points, especially only for the also for the youth and employment. Unemployment allowances. The party's reform plan includes a proposal to provide an unemployment allowances to educated individuals whilst they are seeking work. Job-oriented politics, emphasizing a shift towards certain new and real opportunities for youth rather than empty rhetoric. Government job age limit, a proposal for review and potentially increase the age limit to entry into government jobs. These are the points I just mentioned, because my memory is very weak, that's why I took with the note. Apart from the typical and conventional discussion on the political reforms, these are the points he mentioned on his all policy making and thinking about the Bangladesh. So, especially the students community and the diaspora out of Bangladesh, the young, with their knowledge, with their expertise, they can engage also the policy and the politics of Mr. Tarique Rahman. Thank you, everyone.